and welcome to the Mauve Coaching Podcast. This is the very first episode of what will be an ongoing series where I'll be talking all things health and fitness, emotional and mental health, career chats, travelling, and just life in general, to be honest. The good, the bad, the ugly, absolutely everything. So my intention with this podcast is for it to serve as a safe space for myself, for others that I'll have on, for you guys listening, for openness, transparency, honesty, vulnerability. So these are all core values of mine, and these values ring true to my coaching business, Mauve Coaching. I am so eager to show you guys the real me, and that's what we're gonna get into first, okay? We're gonna be throwing ourselves in the deep end from day dot. And this is actually something that I've been chatting about pretty much since I started my page, before I even made it a coaching business. Although I always knew that was the intention when I started the page. That's however many months ago now, 6 months, maybe 5 months. And that is that of perfectionism. I am your typical recovering perfectionist, and I know that this will resonate with a lot of you. And this is actually, ironically, why I haven't started this podcast sooner. So this was actually on my bucket list of things to do in terms of pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. From the get-go, I always wanted to do this sort of thing. Even years back, I got a vlogging camera for Christmas, and I've just never once taken the plunge to start a YouTube channel, because to be honest, I didn't really know who I was at that time. So it's probably for the best that I waited till I figured that out. But now that I've started this business, I have, as cliche as it sounds, been on a journey of finding myself in pretty much the last year. I have taken the plunge, and also with gentle nudges of encouragement, but pretty much aggressive from my friends, being like, you're doing this, you're starting it. And because of that, I actually gave myself less than a day to do this entire thing so that I could avoid what I would normally do in the past. So when it came to college, everything, always get things done far in advance of the deadline, and then just mull over, overly analyse, overly critique till I hated it. So we're just literally throwing ourselves in the deep end. We're giving ourselves a day to plan, record, edit and launch the Mauve Coaching Podcast. So yeah, this is something that I actually wanted to talk about from the get-go, as I said, because it's kind of a huge part of my journey, which I'll be touching on now, not as much in depth as I would have liked, because it is the first episode and I don't want to throw everything all into one episode without giving each episode of my life, essentially, the time it needs. So yeah, this is just the beginning. But the first fact about me, as I said, recovering perfectionist, very much emphasis on recovering, because I thought I was far further along on my journey in terms of perfectionism, but I realized in the last week or so, chatting with a friend, that even though I have tried, so on Instagram, I have tried my very best to come online, be completely open, transparent, vulnerable about, my personal struggles that I'm going through, at least on captions. Stories have come on for chats, but, even they can be curated to perfection because they're not live. And putting bad photos of myself up, which, to be honest, that actually is a massive leap in the right direction, because that's not something I would have done before. So there's all obviously minor, but nonetheless significant milestones in the last few months alone. But this is definitely throwing myself in the deep end. I'm properly sweating right now, lads. Oh, Lord. Okay, so this straight hair isn't going to be straight by the end of this podcast. I'm telling you that now. God. Okay, Whew. Okay. We're just having ourselves a little moment, right? I could definitely edit this out, but I think I might just keep it in, in honor of the whole 100% transparency, honesty, vulnerability commitment that I've pledged to. Okay, moving on. So as I said, this is what I've been trying to do pretty much since I launched the page. But something that I've realized recently, not just reflecting on my business, but also my personal life, even just on previous relationships, there is a massive difference between being open, being honest, transparent, and vulnerability. So vulnerability for me, from my perspective, is putting yourself out there for the world. In this case, I'm doing that right now, or whoever's listening. I need to not have such notions. The world is not listening to this. But putting yourself out there, literally serving yourself up on a silver platter online to be completely torn apart, potentially, scrutinized, analyzed, critiqued. And that's like my worst fear that I've been trying to, overcome. And it's a work in progress. I definitely would have been super sensitive to criticism in the past, but I think with time, I have gotten better at kind of not really giving an F. I don't know if I'm going to swear in this podcast yet. We'll see. Let's have a soft launch, right? No swearing. Yeah, that's something that I struggled with for my entire adult life, I'm going to say. And especially in Ireland, like if you know, you know. I'm not even going to go into that, but I think there's just people silently supporting you as well as those silently hating on you. And to be honest, over the years, I've cared less and less because that's going to happen regardless. Like as they say, like do what you want because people are going to judge you regardless. So that's why I'm doing this, because that's why I did everything this year. I was like, this is what I want to do. And I was miserable before, and I was doing things to placate others and in fear of being judged. Whereas now I'm doing everything that I ever freaking dreamed of, and the same rings true. Like people could be judging me and supporting me. Like there's going to be both sides of the coin are true. So yeah. So after all that, I kind of just threw you all in the deep end there. You're probably wondering, if you don't follow me already, who on earth am I? First things first, my name is Maeve. Probably should have said that to begin with. Podcast newbie, can you tell? But to be honest, actually, lads, people over the years, because I actually had my Instagram name as Mauve Maeve, because I love the colour mauve, and I'm not even going to start this debate now because it is a shade of pink as well as a shade of purple, because all my things are pink. Do not blow up my perception of my brand, my favourite colour, everything. And people actually call me Mauve, like even people that I meet here, because my page says Mauve Coaching, even though my bio says my real name, people still call me Mauve. And I'm okay with that, to be honest. It's a similar name, or similar sounding name. And my real name is an abomination to spell, as you can tell. Like I even just had a few laughs with the receptionist at the podcast studio because she was like, what is your name? So I go by as Mauve here, May or Maeve. Obviously I'm an Irish girl, as you can tell from probably the name and the accent. I'm an online health and fitness coach, and I empower particularly women to feel and look their best. That's both in the sense of physically, mentally, emotionally, become the best versions of themselves from the inside out. I'm a certified personal trainer, certified yoga instructor, certified nutritionist and gut health advisor. And we will talk about my incessant obsession with being qualified to feel legitimate and or confident in my abilities. I'm gonna take a little sip of water. Can we just appreciate this is pink? So why do I do what I do? Yeah, this is gonna be a hard one to talk about because this is something that I've been putting on the long finger for a while. I know a lot of people are intrigued about it, and their intrigue I find both normal but also daunting because, understandably, which you'll see in a moment, looking at my life on paper, you might be thinking, what is this girl on? Is she all right? So let's just delve into, I guess, where things all began for me. So going back to maybe, as far as I can remember anyway, because I suffer from pretty bad memory. I wouldn't say memory loss. I think I just, as a coping mechanism over the years, blacked out a lot of the younger years of my life. When I was 15 and things started getting serious in secondary school in terms of people were kind of, I think that's like third year, maybe I was 16. You're heading into your senior years in secondary school and everyone's kind of starting to really think about what they want to do with their lives, what they want to be. You know, everyone always gets asked that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? To this day, even, I don't know why, it is probably the most triggering question for me. Dating back, as I said, to that age when I was like 16, and I really started to put my head down in school to prove myself, to placate others, whether I realised it or not. I unknowingly fell out of love with learning about myself, about the world around me, about, you know, everything and anything, and fixated on just achieving, on becoming the best at whatever I did. And being asked that question of what do you want to do when you grow up, that's kind of tied to this deep sense of despair that I felt that I didn't know what my purpose was. I'm a disciplined person, I'm hardworking, I can put my mind to something and results will pay off. Like, I never feared about my ability to, you know, put in the work. My fear was always, I'm putting in all this work, but I hadn't given myself time to figure out what made me tick. I remember looking around myself in secondary school, right through to college, and in absolute admiration, like even at my own dad, loved his job, and he like set that benchmark for what, you know, the role it plays in your life. It should give you a deep sense of fulfillment. And I admired that and I yearned for that. Like, I remember seeing my friends in school knowing what they wanted to be, like be it a doctor, a lawyer. And even in college, like even just in my master's, there was one person in particular that was just so passionate about becoming a lawyer, because that's what I studied, spoiler alert, that I always felt like this sense of jealousy that they knew, and like it wasn't fake, like they knew what they wanted to do. And because I never gave myself that time to explore what made me tick, to really do things for the sense of fulfillment they gave me, as opposed to trying to prove myself. Like, I always had to be the top of my class. Like, I always had to be the best at what I did. And like, that kind of is all rooted to my perfectionism and like my fear of failure. So because of that, like my trajectory is all over the place. So basically I started off in global business, what I did for 4 years. And then I remember vividly, like literally 3 days after I finished my undergrad, every summer, but in particular that summer when I finished for good, like it was my final year of college, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. That realization was so terrifying that I literally panic applied to a master's in law and business. And don't get me wrong, invaluable years of education that stand to me to this day. From there, once again, panic applied to be a consultant at big corporate, and that wasn't what I wanted to do, and I knew that deep down, but once again, didn't know what it was that I wanted to do, and I thought that was just gonna be my normal. I was like, okay, this is my face. I guess I'm just gonna be another number in the system, which no hate to anyone who is in big corp, because we all need to do different things, you know, to play a role in society. But I just always knew that that wasn't my role, and it just felt deeply misaligned with me and like what I knew deep down to be true, to be my purpose. So, and that's where we get to the good part. I always knew my purpose. I just didn't trust myself, which is pretty devastating realization to come to, that for all 24 years of my life, that I just didn't trust my intuition. And this is where the sickening reality or realization came to me. Basically, I came to Bali earlier this year, and I remember having that moment, that realization when I knew what I wanted to do and I knew why I hadn't done it. I had these limiting beliefs about myself. One being that I wasn't good enough, or that I can't trust my intuition. So yeah, it's safe to say that this last year has been a transformative one, to say the least. I know that I'll look back on this with such a sense of gratitude, compassion, and pride, because it was one of those years that simultaneously made me and broke me. Or, as I say, broke me and then made me, because it's like that saying, it's like, you have two lives. The second one begins when you realize that you only have one. Don't know if I said that right. Probably didn't, probably butchered it. And I can't really describe it any better than a rebirth. And that might sound airy-fairy or spoofy if you haven't experienced it. If you're not ready to hear something like that, it might seem mad to you. And I completely get why that would be the case. You're broken down to a point where, as I said, it's make or break. Like you have, like I was hopeless. I've never felt so alone. I was the lowest I'd ever been mentally, which is saying something, because over those years when I was intensely approaching academia, my mental health, emotional well-being, shocking, because I did whatever I could at all costs to achieve, which also meant sacrificing my well-being, which is a topic for another day. And when you reach that point where you've reached, as they say, emotional rock bottom, and you might have felt like you've reached it before, because I know I did. I always thought that over even the last few years, when, especially during lockdown, which I think we've all blocked out mentally, but that actually happened. That was a real thing. Taking a little water break because my voice is sore, because I'm actually recovering from a fever. Not ideal for my first pod, but overcoming perfectionism means not waiting until everything's perfect. So I'm slightly sick, which is kind of grim. So yeah, you might have felt like you've reached that emotional rock bottom before, and to be honest, you probably have to some extent. There's, as I said, in my life been various occasions where I was like, can't get worse than this, but this year for me was no doubt, it can't get worse than this. Like I was hopeless, I wasn't taking care of myself, neglecting myself, abandoning myself, just the lowest I ever felt. I also separated from a long-term relationship. I quit my job, devastated, I'm sure, many people's perceptions of what my life was meant to look like. Sorry, I actually didn't think I'd get upset on this. This is so weird. I am a crier though. I am a crier, so I probably should have expected this. Okay. So yeah, basically this year has been a hard one. And continuing from that, I feel like I've let a lot of people down by choosing myself, by choosing my own happiness, my own well-being, and pursuing my dream, because yeah, it has been a mad year, and I understand. As they say, you're not meant to make rash decisions when you're going through a rough period, but I am so happy that I took a bet on myself, or I took the leaps of faith that I did this year, because even in just the last month alone of being here, doing what I'm doing, I have met friends for life. I've had opportunities of a lifetime already, and it's just the beginning. I have grown so much, it's insane. Like you only realize how much you've grown when you start to journal. So if you don't journal. If things hadn't happened the way they did for me, I wouldn't be who I am today doing what I'm doing now. While my career trajectory was far from linear, as I said, which is actually something that I didn't realize I was holding a lot of shame to. Like I deleted my LinkedIn. Maybe I do have a longer way to go than I realized in terms of owning what I'm doing now, which is, as I said, my dream. Something that I'll actually be talking about in later episodes will be my journey with health and fitness so far. It's ever changing. The gym, initially as a coping mechanism for what was a very triggering time period in my life, to today. Essentially, in short, it was always my salvation, my safe haven, the common denominator in the last 9 years of my life. And this was actually something that I always toyed with, but because of my history, because of like what I chose to study and other people's expectations of me and my potential and basically everyone else's external noise getting in the way of what I need to be true. And like, if I'm being completely brutally honest, because of this external noise, because of how I was conditioned by society about, especially in Ireland, we are conditioned to perceive what a real career looks like, because I think it should be unique to each individual. That's true for every country in the Western world. Like, it's the way education and the system is structured, is that it kind of snuffs out any creativity. Like, you're almost taught how to be an employee, not self-employed. Because of all that, I never really thought that this was a potential job for me, or at least a legitimate one. So I just always kind of hushed myself and just put my head back down, even though I knew what I was doing wasn't making me happy at all. So at least now I've come full circle, later than I would have hoped, but there's no point in wishing that things were different. There's no shame in you starting what your real purpose is, or coming to that realization later than other people. Like, we're all on our own life path. But yeah, because I finally got to this point where I'm learning to back myself, to trust my intuition, to take the leaps of faith, even when the whole world seems to be crashing and burning around you, to go it out alone for a while. Because of my personal life story so far, nothing would make me happier than helping other people get through that and to basically manage, or at least offer a helping hand on their own journeys in not just health and fitness, but emotional and mental well-being. Because, to be honest, I know what it's like to not want to ask for help. But there is no harm in asking for a helping hand. And that is something that I wish I'd done on my own health and fitness journey, on my own emotional and mental health journey. And these are all things that I can now talk about because I'm out the other end. But if you're currently going through that, just know that you're not alone. So yeah, that's actually what I help my fellow females do. I primarily offer tailored training programs, meal plans, recipe, ebook, all that type of stuff, which I'll include in the bio, but also wellness resources such as yoga, mindfulness, breathwork, all that good stuff, because these are all things that help me get to the point I am today now. Because when I started training, I was aimlessly and without structure going to the gym. I wasn't taking care of my nutrition. The knock-on effects that had on my mental health is unreal. And even then, when I did, I'm going to say around 3 years ago, when I started taking it seriously, or relatively seriously, compared to the years before that, I still was miserable, because although I looked the best I ever looked, I still didn't feel inside happy. Like, I wasn't happy. So it's like, that's where the mindfulness, breathwork, yoga comes into play, because for me, a massive part of my healing journey, in particular in the last year, has been in nervous system regulation and gut health in terms of healing the gut microbiome. So yeah, these are all things that we'll be delving into in far more detail. So yeah, that is all from me today, ladies and gentlemen. That is the first episode of the Mauve Coaching Podcast. Stay tuned for far more. I feel like that was all over the place, which I have to be okay with, because that's just the reality of how the first podcast was always going to go, no matter how much time I gave myself. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed listening. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, share with family and friends. It would mean the world to me just to get any sort of support, because yeah, it's daunting. And kudos to everyone who's done this already. I don't think I really quite realized how difficult it would be. So yes, that's all from me. Bye.